My name's Alan Smith. I'm the Outdoor Learning Officer for the Cairngorms National Park Authority. And I also manage the John Muir Award in the Cairngorms area. And for the purposes of the John Muir Award, the Cairngorms area extends right across northeast Scotland and also the Highlands, up into the Highlands. So I cover that whole area really, pretty much for any schools that want to do the John Muir Award. We work with primary schools and secondary schools, but we also work an awful lot with adult groups, health walks, drug and drink rehabilitation groups, mental health stuff, lots of things. The John Muir Award is an awful lot. Primary schools. What we're going to cover today, we're going to find out how the John Muir Award does work. Then I'm just going to cover a few other little bits and pieces that we like to incorporate into the John Muir Award. So how it fits the curriculum for excellence right across the piece, but also look at some of these other issues as well around about gender, about learning sustainability. Citizen science is a key thing that we'll look at and how that fits in. And then we'll also look at some of the resources that are available. And we are going to go out into the courtyard there and do some activity as well, if that's good, because it's such a nice day actually out there. So we'll do that. So in terms of the John Muir Award, it's the educational initiative of the John Muir Trust. And the John Muir Trust is a charity that seeks to have all members of society value wild land. And the way they do that is three ways. They do that by owning properties. So they own properties right across Scotland. So Ben Nevis, Sandwood Bay, Schiehallion, all of these places are owned by the John Muir Trust, and they manage those areas for biodiversity and people and try and make the two mix together, which is great. They also lobby the Scottish Government and the Westminster Government on environmental matters. And then they have this engagement programme, which is the John Muir Award. Okay, so through the John Muir Award, we're trying to reach a big audience of people to get them to discover, to enjoy and to connect with wild places across the UK. Now we use different terminology which doesn't really matter to you, but in certain circles you've got to use exactly the right word. So wild land is one thing, a wild place is something very different. And for the purposes of the John Muir Award, you do your activity in a wild place or places. And a wild place is anywhere that nature prevails to some extent or other. Somewhere that you can go outside and find plants, bugs, birds, all that sort of stuff. So certainly within this school here, I've been out into the courtyard there. I've set the alarm off when I first opened the door, which was a bit of a shock. We've got that sorted, so we'll be all right when we go out. Great courtyard out there with grass, shrubs, all sorts of areas where they're growing things. You can do a John Muir Award just in that area out there. Okay, you can do it really close to your school. So your school grounds, okay, is the first place to think about. If you know about the documented curriculum for excellence through outdoor learning, there's this diagram of ever-increasing circles of where your activity can take place. And so the places that are closer to home are very accessible, so the school grounds, but then you might want to go further afield to think about your local wild places. I would imagine that all of you will know of a place nearby your school where you can walk to in a few minutes. There might be a bit of woodland or parkland that you can actually go out there and use, okay? And then of course you can go further afield. You could come and travel to the Cairngorms National Park if you wanted to, and we have travel grants to help you do that, okay? But the key thing is that you can start it off really close to home in your wild place. Okay, you can have more than one place that you do your activity. So some of the schools that I work with, particularly in Murray and Aberdeenshire, who are on the coast, you know, they'll do stuff and they'll do some things on the beach and then they'll go into the woods and they can compare and contrast those different habitats to see what they're all like, you know, which ones they like. What we ask you to do in those wild places is to meet 4 challenges. We ask you to discover the wild place, we ask you to explore it, we ask you to conserve it, and then we ask you to share your experiences. What that means basically is that through discovering, you're just deciding where your activity is going to take place, what the wild place is going to be. You go into that wild place and you explore it. You find out all about its natural characteristics. You look at what lives there, why it lives there, how it lives there, what else lives there, all that sort of stuff. How you connect to it, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, all of those things. You do something to look after it, to conserve it, the conserve challenge, so putting something back, taking some personal responsibility for that wild place. And then finally, you share your experiences, both within your group, within your class, but also maybe with a wider audience through an assembly or a guided walk or some posters or photographs or whatever, okay? You also then have to find out about John Muir. Okay, it's called the John Muir Award for a reason, and it is all about John Muir the man. The key thing about those 4 challenges and the way that you meet them is that the activities you use are entirely up to you, what you decide to actually do to meet those challenges. We don't have a set program or a set syllabus of things you have to do. Okay, so you can decide, right, okay, I want to use this John Muir Award primarily to focus on numeracy. So it means that when I'm going out into the outdoors to do my activities, I'm going to think about how we can meet those experiences and outcomes that lead to numeracy. Okay, so that can be your key objective, as well as getting young people to go outside and connect, enjoy and discover a wild place. Okay, the John Muir Award does work best when you actually merge it with your own objectives, rather than it trying to be a standalone project. Okay, so you can fit that in there. There's lots of precedent for people using the John Muir Award for all curricular areas, including numeracy. And we have lots of case studies on our website, which you can actually look at and find out about. Okay. The key thing about finding out about John Muir, I think, certainly for the STEM side of things, that John Muir was one of those Victorian polymaths. He was good at lots of different things. He had intense curiosity for the natural world and would go and walk for days and explore somewhere. And he'd find somewhere that was of interest and he would stop and he would want to discover more about it. He was the first person to sort of call for the preservation, the conservation of natural resources, and he used to share his own experiences far and wide. So in a sense, our 4 challenges are very much based upon the life and the work of John Muir. Now, in every secondary school in Scotland, a few years ago, they got a copy of this book, okay, John Muir, Earth, Planet, Universe, which is a graphic novel all about John Muir's life, and then it's got some activities and things at the back. It didn't get into the primary schools, I'm afraid, but it is available online as a download. Or if you have a good connection in the secondary school, you'll probably find that they're sat on a shelf collecting dust somewhere, and then you could probably borrow them. So it's worth checking that out from your local high school if you've got a contact there. But as I say, you can download it from online. And this is a great way of finding out about John Muir. Really tells you all about his story in a very sort of engaging way. What's also very good about John Muir is he was a very good writer. And he's got this book is one I like. It's called The Wild Muir, and it's 22 of John Muir's greatest adventures. He had that many. They had to narrow it down to just 22. And these are all written in his own words, and how he actually managed to live to an old age, I've no idea. He was mad as a box of frogs, and he used to do things like climb to the top of really big trees in storms to see what it felt like, jumped into an avalanche, got stuck on mountains, did all sorts of things. One of the classic things he did, and we... I'll talk about the Mission Explorer in a minute. It was, he was stuck on the top of a mountain with another man, so they danced. They did Highland fling and stuff like that during the night to keep themselves warm, that sort of stuff. So he's a great character. He's really engaging, and young people really respond to some of his stories. His writing is very nice and lyrical. Okay, it's not very dry and dusty like a lot of Victorian explorers. So that's the John Muir Award. The way that you get engaged with it is to actually, if you go onto the website, I'm not going to go through the whole process just now, with the time we have, is to go onto the website and you have to send then in a proposal form to me that outlines what you're going to do. And you email that to me, I'll email you back and say, that's brilliant, on you go. Okay, then it's up to you pretty much to do the activity that you've outlined on the proposal form. It's up to you also to assess that the participants, your pupils, have met the criteria for gaining the award. Okay, nothing comes back to me for marking, it's assessed. It's not like that. It's about each of your pupils' personal experience in the wild place and how they get there. Okay, so it's up to you to decide that they've done the time, they've met the challenges, and they've participated with commitment and enthusiasm, is our little phrase for it. Any other evaluation or stuff that you want to do around that is entirely up to you. Okay, so that's the award, and I'll leave that there. If you've got any more questions about it, we can come on to that later. The website has got everything you need to know to set up a John Muir Award. It's a very simple process. Okay, but I'm also available if you need any help with that. So those of you who are thinking about doing it, do take a look at that. The Get Involved page on the website just leads you right through the whole process, and it's really straightforward. Okay, super. One of the things that we did a number of years ago was to create a document, John Muir Award and the Curriculum for Excellence. And the best thing about that, I think, was this page that we had in there, which is great. And what we did is a lot of outdoor learning providers actually did a mapping exercise where they outlined what experiences and outcomes their programs would meet. Okay, but we got a bit scared of that when we looked at how many experiences and outcomes there are, and decided actually what we'd better doing is giving people examples of activities people have used for their John Muir Award within subject areas. And then you're the experts then at looking at that and thinking, right, that's the experiences and outcomes I can get from this. Okay, so you can see there it covers all the curriculum areas. Mathematics and numeracy up there at the top right. There's all sorts of things in there. Plan and measure routes, mapping skills, references and bearings, which link to the experiences and outcomes. estimate and measure the heights of trees. So this is a little list of activities that people have actually used and have come off proposal forms. It's not stuff we made up. And that's just a short list. Okay, it's endless, the amount of stuff people actually do. So you can see there, but you can also see that right across the whole curriculum, how these things actually sort of used the John Muir Award for that. So one of the things about the John Muir Award is it works really well as a sort of multidisciplinary cross-curricular project. Okay, and that's one of the best ways of using it in a sense. And I was speaking to the group earlier about the science sort of curriculum area, in that actually, you know, one of the great ways of actually incorporating a John Muir Award within your school is if you have an area like that outside or not, is actually creating a wildlife garden or a wildlife space within your grounds that you can actually use. A lot of schools will have them, and they might well have been done as a project a few years ago, but ordinarily they've maybe gone into a bit of a state of disrepair. So re-engaging with that and thinking about how you can use it brings in all those skills right across the curriculum that you want to. And particularly within numeracy, when you're looking at, okay, we want to build it, well, we need to have a plan. So the first thing we maybe need to do is to do a map of that area we're going to use and actually plot out where things are going to be. So that involves all that measuring and counting, spatial awareness, size, scale, all of those things that you can actually bring into the sort of project there, doing that. And then once you've got it, sort of then building it again, what materials do we need? How much of this will we need if we're going to make it this big? All of those things sort of fit really nicely within the whole numeracy thing. But it's a really practical, real example of it in action. Again, the gentleman this morning I think was really good in terms of his, you know, making it real and doing that sort of stuff, which is great. So that was a really useful one to use. So that's a really good sort of document there to actually give you an idea of some of the activities people have used. We also have case studies on the website, which is worth looking at, where people have actually used numeracy and done a lot of those things. Okay, so the whole document itself, John Muir Award and the Curriculum for Excellence, can actually be found on our website as well. And that goes into a whole load of other stuff around about inclusion, health and well-being, attainment, and all of those other areas that you guys have to deal with. Okay, so it gives you the full picture of the whole thing. Okay. Another thing the gentleman this morning mentioned, which I was really pleased about, was gender. Which was, he was talking about that whole thing, and that, you know, the sort of impression we have of scientists, you know, and we generally see the man in the white coat with a packet of washing powder on the telly telling us it's really good because it does this, you know, the science bit, and that's generally what you get, which of course is not what it's like at all. The John Muir Award have written a great article called Women in the Wild, and that's looking at a lot of women who work across the land-based sector, conservation and ecology, and the work that they do, and that's worth a little look at, that sort of article, sort of giving you an idea of the range of careers and areas that people work in. And certainly I work in the National Park Authority, and we have a very mixed, very balanced, I'd say, staff at a certain level anyway, of officers who work in ecology, landscape, and all of those areas, and planning and everything like that, you know, right across the board, which is useful. We also ran a project last year in the National Park called Women in Wellies, where we got a whole load of women from the land-based sector to come and tell their stories to a group of pupils from across the national park about how they got into their careers. And if you search for Women in Wellies on our website, you'll come across films of those people speaking about their jobs, and also great sources of where people can find out information about careers, certainly within the STEM industries and the STEM sector, which is very important. One of our other key areas that we like to look at a lot is learning for sustainability as an approach. And as I was mentioning earlier, the John Muir Award is very much this holistic approach to the environment and how people engage with it. So it does incorporate not just finding out about trees and animals, but also about how we live our lives and how we impact on the environment generally. So it fits very well with a lot of the learning sustainability ideas, but also with the whole eco schools programs as well, in terms of uses of natural environment and how we do that. We create things called resource guides, which give you a bit of information about a topic, but then the main bit of it is lots of websites where you can go to find activities and resources around that particular topic. So this is the one for sustainability. I don't think I've got enough of these. There we go. Oh, if you could share one, because you're at the same school, that would be good, isn't it? There we go. There's another one there. Okay. So the key thing that we like about, and particularly, looking at the sustainability goals as well that are coming in and how the John Muir Award can fit into that is really important. And, key thing that we want to do with the John Muir Award is not just have people find out about nature and the environment, but also to think about how they live their lives and how they impact on it. So our key aim is changing attitudes, behaviours and beliefs in a way that is pro-environment so that people are living lives that are more sustainable. And I think certainly the actions we've seen recently with all the school children being on strike and right across the globe shows the sort of depth of passion that people have for the future and how that can work. And of course the STEM industries and the STEM work is going to be critical to that in terms of new technologies and new ways of living. So it's really important area that we actually look at this and how it works. What it also is very useful for is putting what you're doing in the context and framing it in a bigger picture. So that when you're doing work about something, you say, well, this is important because it leads into this and it affects that, and I think, young people really cotton onto that rather than it just being a sort of very singular exercise. It actually fits into that wider, bigger picture. Very important things to be doing. Okay. Citizen science is something that came around a whole number of years ago. And again, this fits really nicely with what the gentleman was talking about this morning. If you just want to grab a chair and come and join us, that'll be fine, not a problem. Particularly, the vision of what scientists are. And again, we mentioned the man in the white coat. And for me, scientists are always Beaker. I remember the Muppets in those days. And I worked for a long time in Antarctica as a guide for scientists. And we used to call them Beakers, and that was it's just terrible, really. But that was just the impression you got. And in fact, the range of people that work in science is huge. Citizen science is all about trying to demystify that and make it possible and popular for anybody, whoever they are, to get involved in science and get involved in those things. And a lot of that stuff is around counting and surveying, okay, and getting people to go out on things like bioblitzes, to go out and see, how many species they see in a certain amount of time, do an audit of their local park, to do a transect, to count particular species, butterflies, squirrels. The RSP Big Garden Birdwatch gets thousands, hundreds of thousands of people taking part in that every year, and it's about counting and grouping. Again, two things that are key to the curriculum that you're looking at there, of looking at various different things, seeing how many there are of one, why, how many there are of another, why aren't there any more of those, that sort of thing. So it all fits in really nicely with your numeracy side of things there. So as I was mentioning earlier, we do have various case studies. So Stirling High School did one there, and again that was using their school grounds slightly further afield, and again they did a survey of their grounds to see what was there. And that did a number of things. One is it gave them an idea of what was there, but then also gave them the material then for moving forward and planning of what they could do to enhance that area for biodiversity, which is a key thing. And again, that's all down to mapping, surveying, counting, auditing, all of those things. Very important stuff. An organisation that has come very much to the fore is the Open Air Laboratories, OPAL. Now these guys, there's more information about this down on the Outdoor and Woodland Learning stall down in the big hall, we're shown as that. Open Air Laboratories, and they provided a whole load of resources, these sort of survey packs. So there's one here that's called the Tree Health Survey Pack, okay, and in there that's a complete pack. You've got everything in there you need in order to look at the health of trees, okay, and you can lead right through that. And they're very simple. They're made by the Field Studies Council, who are a great organisation who are also here. So I recommend you go and speak to them as well down in the main hall. They've got some other bits and pieces that you can look at. They do it on a whole range of things. They do it on trees, they do it on water. A recent one they've done is on pollination, okay, which is really critical, of course, various things. So they're really nice to use those and get out there and do that. So we're going to use some of those a bit later when we go outside to do that. So citizen science is a key element of things that you can actually involve in your John Muir Award in meeting those 4 challenges and the way that it works. Juliet Robertson, people come across creative style learning? Yeah, good. Yeah, thought you might. So yeah, messy maths, so this is for early years and first level, but I think you can just sort of extrapolate and move it on to whatever level you want in terms of the ideas and what you fit in there, but it gives you lots of different ideas about going outdoors and doing various things. And another one that she wrote, of course, was Dirty Learning, which is that one, Beginner's Guide to Learning Outdoors. Okay, so again, this crosses right across all of the curriculum. Okay, I'm not on any commission, so if you want to buy it, so all right. Another one which I think is really good, actually, while we're on it, is this one, Learning with Nature. And this is a great book because it goes right across lots of different areas, sort of very scientific, team building, but it also does stuff like arts and crafts and also bushcraft and lots of different things, and cooking and various things outdoors. And that's by Marina Robb and various other people. Okay, it's a very nice book. But in terms of getting out there, there's the man who started it all off, really, Joseph Cornell. And you've come across Joseph Cornell, Sharing Nature with Children, originally written in the 1960s. Bit of sort of counterculture American hippie stuff. Brilliant, really nice, really good book. Okay, it's been updated, so it's now about sharing nature with people, deep nature play and various other things. So when that gentleman this morning was talking about getting families involved, again, that whole thing fits in really nicely. And the key thing with a lot of Joseph Cornell stuff and these other books is it's about that awakening curiosity and really getting people outside, discovering, exploring things. And that's really what a lot of the STEM stuff is about, as the gentleman mentioned. So there's loads of resources out there for you to look at. Okay. We have some more CPD coming up, which is about literacy. So again, I don't know if you've come across the Lost Words book, which was written by Robert McFarlane. It's about the words that were taken out of the recent Junior Oxford English Dictionary that were removed, a lot of them were natural words, were taken out. So words about the natural landscape, names of birds, plants, bushes and things. And of course there was a whole thing about then reintroducing those. And there's a great resource pack has been done all around this about literacy in nature. And Emily, who's along there, is coordinating some workshops around about literacy in nature. Based on some of the resources that were created by the John Muir Award and the Lost Words folk. So there's one in the 21st, but I think it's at Brecon. Okay, and then there's going to be one at Abernethy Primary School as well, and then there's another one down in Loch Arbour in Fort William as well, which are really good. Okay. In terms of numeracy, we're going to go outside and we're going to do a couple of activities. The other people that have created some really good resources are the Outdoor and Woodland Learning Scotland groups. Used to be Forest Education Initiative, so it's sort of funded by the Forestry Commission, but it involves all the Environment and Forestry Directorate partners, so Forestry Commission, National Parks, Scottish Natural Heritage. They've done all sorts of good resources. And there's lots of more information about this down again on the stand at the bottom. But this one is all about tree measuring. So we're going to go outside and measure some trees. Okay, that's what we're going to do. All right, if you're happy to do that. Now, we've only got one copy of this, but we'll share it. And we can look at, I think, level 1 and level 2. In terms of how we measure trees. Okay, so there's various techniques for doing this, and then it also in here it outlines, what activities you can use, all the different levels, and then also then outlines what E's and O's and etc. it actually fits with. Okay, so if you're happy to go outside for a little while, 10-15 minutes, and we'll put back in and finish off. Okay, right. So what we'll do is. There's a couple of these. If people want to take one of these out, you can open this up and you can take all of this stuff away with you, these tree guides if you want. And there's a good work pack in there that we'll have a look at. So there's the Tree Health Survey Guide. And we'll start off by having a little look at that, and it tells you all about it. And then there's a workbook. And one of the things is about measuring your tree. Okay, and we'll go outside and we'll look at the techniques for measuring trees. Okay, so there's more of those there. So you'll need a pencil. I think is going to be the key one that we're going to use. So if you've got a pencil or something, that'd be great. Yep, you got pencils over there. Hi, hello. How are you doing? You all right? Can you not find us? Are you a bit?
We thought it was lunch.
Yeah, so last session we ran on, so we were looking at all the things in the hall. If it was lunchtime, so sorry.
That's okay, not a problem. That's absolutely fine. So we're going to go outside and we're going to use some of these techniques to measure trees. So it says, right, start your survey here. Get to know your tree. So choosing a tree. So it says there, it says all you need is a safe access to one or more broadleaf trees. Okay, now start surveying. And it says you do what you do and you record it, and then you identify it, and then you go right the way through, doing all of that sort of stuff, and you record that in your workbook, and then you've done that at the end, which is great. And one of the things they ask you to do is measure the tree. Okay, now these trees actually aren't too bad. You could probably do it with a step ladder and a ruler, couldn't you? But we're going to measure them anyway. We're going to use the techniques that are actually in this book here. Okay, and the one we're going to use is where you use a pencil to measure a tree. Okay, so it's really simple. Okay, measuring a tree. Using a pencil to measure a tree. So it has it here. Okay. All right. So you might want to just get into pairs. Okay. If you get into pairs, there's 2, 4, and a 3. That's fine. And there's various trees about. They're not very big, which is probably quite handy actually. We shouldn't have to go too far. And I'll read out the instructions first of all, and then I'll come around to see how you're getting on. So you work in pairs, it says, or 3s. Child 1 stays beside the tree. Child 2 walks away from the tree but looks back at intervals. Okay. When they look back, child 2 holds up a pencil at arm's length vertically and lines it up with the tree. Child 2 keeps walking until the bottom of the tree is level with the bottom of the pencil and the top of the tree is level with the top of the pencil. Okay, so you can imagine that it's that parallel. So we walk back and the tree is exactly the same size as your pencil. Okay, so when they've got there, child 2 stays in that position and then turns the pencil to a horizontal position. Okay, with the end of the pencil at the base of the tree. And then they tell child 1 to walk away from the tree until that child is at the other end of the pencil. So they're the same distance away if the pencil is a height. Okay, child 1 marks this spot, and the distance between this mark and the base of the tree is the height of the tree. Okay, yeah, that's pretty simple, isn't it? And it says measure this distance roughly by pacing out in this case. Okay, and then you can measure the distance exactly by using a measuring tape or trundle wheel. Compare the results. Okay, so do you want to give that a go?
Yeah.
So do you see how that works? That's really simple. And if you got what surprises me always is how far you have to walk back in order to get the pencil lined up, isn't it? You know, you think of very little trees, so you can imagine if you're in a much bigger trees, you know, the space you'd need to have in order to do that. You know, and it was quite surprising. Okay, do you want to try one more technique for measuring a tree? Okay, and you can only try this one if you want to. You don't have to. Okay, when I tell you it, you might decide you're not going to do it. Okay? All right. Let's see that. No, it's measuring tree height by looking through your legs. Anyone come across this before? No. Apparently, if you look down through your legs, top of a tree, then you're looking actually up at it at a 45-degree angle. That's what it says here, roughly. And then, of course, if you've got a 45-degree angle on one at the top, what sort of triangle have you got?
Right angle.
Equilateral triangle. So it means that the sides are the same length. Okay, which means then that if I'm looking at a tree and I'm looking at it, if I keep walking away until I see the top of the tree between my legs, okay, the length from me to the tree is going to be the same as the height of the tree because all the sides of the triangle are equal. Okay. Does anybody want to have a go at that? I realise we're being filmed, so it's probably not the most gratifying thing we can do. Okay. All right. So this book is full of those things. This resource, lots of different stuff, and again, it's one of these things that's progressive as well. So we were talking about there. The first time you measured the height of the tree was pacing it, which is fairly crude, Okay, but then you can actually then start to use different measuring ideas. When I was in the room earlier sorting out, a gentleman came in. He says, "Do you mind if I measure the room?" I was like, "What? Is this a trick or whatever? So what are we doing later?" And he said, "Oh no," and he had one of his like laser things, measuring it. So that way you can start to move up towards the whole technology of measuring things. And again, within sort of science and technology, in terms of measuring, surveying and planning, all of those things. When your house gets built and when they put in anything, they're always measuring it, but they're using ever increasing sophisticated ways of measuring distances and stuff, so you can start to introduce all of that, which is great. Okay, so this is a really nice resource for that, but again, it's using your wild place in a very practical way to show real examples of actually using numeracy and numbers. Okay, is that all right? Good. I'm just going to check the time because we don't want to miss lunch for a second time, do we? Right, what I want to shout, you do want to just sort of come in a little bit, so I'm not shouting too much. It's breezy out here. One of the other things we were sort of looking at was maps and grids and distance and direction and all of those sorts of things. And there's some great games that you can play around that in terms of giving people directions and getting them to move and count and move around that sort of stuff. So mapping is a really important thing. So mapping this area would be a good thing to do to then sort of plan it out. But also in terms of following a route and going places, there's really good ways of people working out how you give instructions about direction. Okay. Now the one that we all know, of course, is What's a couple of examples of that? What have we got? What can we use for giving direction? What's the first one? Left and right. That's brilliant. Yeah. And what else do we use? You know, if I'm on a fighter plane and saying there's bandits at 10 o'clock, you know, so you use the clock, don't you? That sort of thing. But also then there's northwest, northeast, south and west. Okay, for giving directions. Ever more complicated as we get on with that. Okay. So one of the things that you can do, and we might just do this for a little while, is I want you to again to get into your pairs and threes. Okay, one person's going to walk with their eyes closed. Okay, as long as they feel comfortable doing that. If you don't, you can open your eyes. Okay, the other person has to give them directions to get back into the classroom. Okay, all right. And I'm going to position you in various different places. Okay, now you can decide if you're going to use left or right. You can decide if you're going to use the clock, or you can decide if you're going to use north, east, south, and west. Okay, I want all three of those to be used. Okay. So you can give an idea of what you want to do. Okay. So do you want to work as a three as you were? Mm-hmm. And if you go over to behind that spiky tree over there, start in that corner, right behind that spiky tree would be great. That would be good. And you guys, you want a two? Mm-hmm. You two. Okay. If you go over behind those little conifers, okay, you can start off. Okay. You two, I want you to go into the middle of this thing here. Actually, that would be great. And you guys, I want you to go and say hello to the giant, and from there, and then talk to each other and decide what technique you're going to use.
And then you're going to take 3 steps forward. I'm going to go on this side of you, just a step down, okay? So stay on. No, you don't need to step down, but just so you don't step down. So 5 steps forward. Okay, a little bit to the left. Okay, yeah, 5 more steps forward. Yeah, 5 more. We're on the straight and narrow up to the front door, and then there's just a wee step in front of you.
Yeah, you can open your eyes now. Or back, that's great. So with that activity, you know, if you're introducing clock or you know, north, east, south, west, the grid reference, all those sorts of things, you can start to use that. One of the other things you can start to do with it is actually to say, right, okay, you can start off by talking to each other and using that, and then you gradually remove things. So you can say, right, no speech. So then they have to sort of talk to each other and work out a way of doing all of that sort of stuff, okay, which is all about communication as well as teamwork, and also about using the sort of numbers and the way things work and how you direct people. Okay.
What's that book called? The one you had out with all your structure?
Tree measuring.
Is that it?
That's it, yeah. And if you go down onto the Outdoor and Woodlands Scotland stand, which is in the hall, talk to Shona. This is her copy. I pinched it for just now. I will take it back, you know. But there's you can get that, and she's got other resources down there as well, which are really quite useful to do that. Okay, so I've got one other resource for you here, which is a resource guide produced by John Muir again about surveys. About gathering information. Okay, so we've had all sorts of things around about how you can do this, but it's also this surveys for wildlife, but it can also be when you're looking at data and statistics and probability and all of those sorts of things, whereby you're gathering lots of objects from outside and then you're grouping them and looking at them and where they're found and doing all that sort of stuff, which again is something that I've had people do in the past. And also being outside and using things outside to create the graphs outside, using natural materials, you know, to actually create stuff so you can actually see it and do it outside, take photographs of it, bring it back, and then transfer that information then onto a copy, which of course is exactly what happens with scientific field work. When people are outside in the field collecting data, they'll collect it in one form and they'll bring it back and write it up and create that whole process to make it, and then analyze it and use it. So again, it's seeing that whole process of things where it starts right out in the field outside, bringing it back in through to some sort of ideas and hypothesis testing and stuff as well, which is really important. So you can use all of that. Okay, that's me, really. Does anyone have any questions about either some of the numeracy stuff or the STEM stuff or setting up the John Muir Award, any of those things that they want to ask about it? Yep.
How long does it typically take to achieve the John Muir?
Right, the John Muir Award has 3 different levels. It has the Discovery level, Explorer level and the Conserver level. The Discovery level requires 4 days of activity, Explorer level 8 days, and the conserva level 20 days over a period of 6 months. That's a minimum. Ordinarily, people will split that 4 days up into whatever works for them. So outdoor activity centres that we work with who do residentials, a school group will come in on Monday, they'll leave on Friday. During that period, they'll do a John Muir Award over the contiguous days. Most schools use it on a project basis, whereby every week they're going out for an afternoon or something to do something leading to it. Okay, most people do way more than the 4 days. A lot of schools now, rather than doing it as just a short project, will actually do it right across the whole session, okay, or the whole year, or even just the whole term. Okay, one of the good things about that is that continued engagement in an outdoor place gives you far more information and engagement than just sort of doing it as a quick in and out type of thing. All right, how you break that time up is entirely up to you. What we recommend is that you don't break it down into too small a period. So half an hour a month is just really not going to do it. But an afternoon a week or a morning a week is really good. And then you can do that right across the year. One of the things that's really good about doing it right across the whole year is that you can collect information about a particular thing right the way through all the different seasons. And you actually have this huge data set of stuff that you can collect and then start to look at and then break down and say, well, why is this happening here and why isn't it there? So you can use it for all sorts of scientific and numerical analyses when you do it over a longer period of time, which works really nicely. Okay, progression through, excuse me, progression through the award is not just about doing more of the same for longer. What we expect people to do is to perhaps delve a bit deeper or go a bit broader into an issue or a topic that they were interested in from the first award. So moving on to the next level, you're actually going to focus in a bit sharper on a particular topic. Okay, but also then get the pupils to take more of a role in co-designing what that work looks like as well. So giving them the initiative and the leadership to do that. And then similarly on to the next level if you can. Tends not to be a huge amount of progression in schools, in that you'll have, because of the way that classes work, in that, one class then moves on to a new teacher rather than you having them sort of year in year. But it is possible if you start at the very beginning of the school year to do the discovery level and then go on to the explorer level. Not a problem at all. Okay, so it's a case of not trying to make it too short, okay, but also not sort of starting it and it goes on forever as well, sort of really. I think what it does offer you is a really good structure and framework for basing an outdoor project on. So you have that 4 challenge framework that you use. So it really gives you a rigid structure that you can use to put things around. Okay, yep. The John Muir Award recommends that it's done from second level and above. Okay, and that's purely because the way that the award is an individual award, it's about the individual and their experiences in the wild place. So it's a case of they go outside and they do the award and they get what it is they're doing and why, is the sort of caveat. My view on that, so the John Muir Trust would say P5 and above. I tend to say, well, if it's a composite class, P4, 5, that's absolutely fine. Because a lot of the award is done, you send me the information about what you're going to do. I know about it and I'll get back to you and just sort of a chat to say, well, make sure that each individual really knows what it is and that they're doing. Lower than that, it's not really sort of seen as an award for them. There's lots of other things you can do, lots of other projects, like from the RSPB or the Woodland Trust, Nature Detectives, all of those things, and all that sort of thing, leading then in through. And then again, that gives you a bit of progression in your own school through, the youngsters, the early years and first level coming through, doing various bits outdoors, a lot of outdoor play, to then to a more structured award like the John Muir Award when they get higher up. Okay. Any other questions? No?
Is the tree measuring book freely available on the website?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah, all the resources that are produced through, I think, the Outdoor Woodland Learning are done by Environment and Forestry Director of the Scottish Government. So I think they're all free. But the thing to do is go down and check with Shona on the stand down in the hall. Okay? I hope that's been useful to you. And I've got, if anybody wants my details, I've got my card here. So please help yourself to that. So if you've got any questions about John Muir Award, how it works, how you want to do it, or anything about outdoor learning, or coming to visit the Cairngorms National Park, we offer a travel grant for groups to come on educational visits. So please do that. Then I'm the person to get in touch with. Okay. So if you want to take my details, just help yourself to a card here. Okay. If anybody wants this water survey or this pollination survey, then do help yourselves. Okay. I'm afraid the books are mine. Oh, one thing to further mention is Mission Explore. If you ever come across Mission Explore, search it on the website. They do these great little booklets of really anarchic activities. And we created one which is all about John Muir and John Muir missions, one of which was create a dance to keep yourself warm on top of a mountain. Why not? Okay, great, super, thanks folks. I believe now it is actually lunchtime.